drive ratio, so you're probably not going to get much more top speed, but it should improve the acceleration quite a bit. And we're going to find out by how much a little later on in this video when I launch this car and compare it to my bog standard Jimny. Twisted have made some visual changes to this Jimny. You've probably noticed the decals. They've also painted the front grille in body colour. You can also see it's got chunky BF Goodrich all-terrain tyres and 16-inch alloy wheels. It also looks meaner, not just because of those chunky tyres, it's because it's had a lift. It's raised by up to 2 inches. And that brings you on to some other chassis changes. You see, if you look up there are some new springs from Ibach. You've also got Bilstein dampers and an anti-roll bar at the rear. The standard Jimny doesn't have one of those. Here on the inside there is a major change, and it's the fact that they have trimmed the cabin with lots of lovely fine feeling leather. Look on the dash up here, it really does just lift the entire cabin, especially in this two-tone effect, and it makes this car feel like a genuine little G-Wagon. There's even Alcantara headlining. It's lovely. It's not perfect though. You see some of the stitching is a little bit wonky, and over here on the doors as well. You can tell it's been done by hand. Something I'm a bit curious about are these dimples here. You see on the standard Jimny there's some nuts there with big recesses, and ideally Twisted should have filled those in so you've got a nice smooth surface. It just looks a bit odd. Another thing I'm not so sure about, this big leather bag covering the gear gaiter that you get as standard. You can feel the standard gear gaiter underneath it. And then one final thing, the fact that this is the van version, so you have no back seats. It'd be much better if you had my Jimny and then converted it, because then you would have back seats. Also with my Jimny, because it's the SZ5 with the top of the range trim, you get the standard top of the range Suzuki infotainment system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. What Twisted have had to do is fit an aftermarket system, because normally this van-based Jimny has just a terrible little radio. It's not very good. And this system doesn't have Apple CarPlay nor Android Auto. So considering you're paying all that money and you're getting a stereo like that, it's not ideal, though I'm sure for a little bit extra you can upgrade the infotainment system to one that you'd much rather have. But I've got to say, overall, sat in it, it really does bring about a huge change to what the Jimny feels like to sit in. Before I drive the Twisted Jimny, I'm just going to drive my own to set the benchmark. This car is completely standard, well, apart from a bunch of accessories which are official Suzuki accessories that were fitted to the car when I bought it, but they don't affect how it drives.
Today we are
Today we are test driving a 2002 Volkswagen Polo. I paid 300 euros for this, and as you can imagine it's not in perfect condition. But it runs and drives really good. Under the hood we have a 1.9 liter non-turbo diesel, making only 64 horsepower. What a beast! unfortunately, it turned out to be a bit rusty and rust repairs because one of the rear trailing lines broke off. This car comes with a 1.5 petrol engine, making 115 horsepower. And yes, this is a good big diesel, but it's not for Today we are test driving this beautiful Volkswagen Passat B2. This is a 1985 model, which means this car is now 40 years old.
I'm tired, boss.
I bought this car 2 years ago for 500 euros, and I must say it wasn't a very good deal.
So we already took a look at the Ferrari SF24, but now it's time to take a look at the Red Bull RB20 and see which one is a better purchase.
it does. Very similar.
However, there's 1 extra inch in length on this RB20 from what I can see. This is definitely odd, but I'm pretty sure I didn't do anything wrong while building this that would have added an extra inch to the front of the Red Bull car. The RB20 and the Ferrari have a lot of similarities, but the cool thing is that the designers did a really good job of changing a lot of the build flow in order to keep it fresh. Up front, we have the front wing of the car, which in my opinion has a similar problem with the shape, just like we saw with the Ferrari, just not enough curve upward for downward force from the airflow. The nose cone of the car, I feel like, has a much better design than the Ferrari and just overall looks a lot cleaner. The nose of the car isn't quite as boxy, which is great. The suspension is really cool on both cars, and the suspension here in the RB20 is actually in reverse from the Ferrari. The suspension of the RB20 utilizes a pull rod up front, which compresses the Technic shock absorber when it's while the rear has a push rod suspension system. We can see this with the bar here sitting higher on the chassis and lower on the wheel. Speaking of wheels, like the Ferrari, we again get the really nice smooth printed tires. Wheel covers on the RB20 are accurate to the actual car, but are pretty plain and have no printing. They're basically just one solid black mold and definitely are outshined by the highly detailed Ferrari wheel covers. Unfortunately, still no larger rear tires on the RB20, just like we saw with the Ferrari. The blue color of the body panels on the Red Bull car look good, but they are slightly off from the actual car, which has a much deeper and darker blue color. I did like the fact that we have this full yellow airbox, which does match the actual car really well and flows nicely into the large sticker Red Bull symbol. Unfortunately, like with the Ferrari, everything on this car is stickers. The only printing is on the wheels. The logos on the build do match up really well to the actual car, so no complaints there. And then moving to the back of the car, we have the adjustable rear wing. The rear wing and frame looks a little more boxy than that of the Ferrari, so I think the Ferrari outshines the RB20 here. I also like the use of the hockey stick on the Ferrari better for the swan neck than what was done here with the RB20. We have a very similar halo and cockpit on the RB20. The steering wheel is pointed down, which I like better, but still no logo on the actual steering wheel. I'll also point out that the side mirrors are much more extensive on the Red Bull car versus the Ferrari. And lastly, we can remove the entire airbox to get down to the engine, which has the same 2-speed gearbox, which can adjust like so. I will say the airbox was much more complex and larger build than the Ferrari, but under the hood, you can see the internal workings a lot better on the Ferrari than that of the RB20. So if that's important to you to see all the internal workings, keep that in mind. The build experience was the same in a lot of ways, but at the same point in time, it was also very different, which is kind of odd to say, but it's cool because it definitely kept things fresh building one car and then moving on to the next. Now, if I had to pin down which one I thought was better, I would probably have to go with the RB20. It was just a little bit more complex. I thought the build experience was just a little bit better. Not much, they were both great builds, but with the 300 extra pieces, you just have a little bit more complexity. So, on the build experience, out of 40 points, I'm going to give the Red Bull car a 32 out of 40, which is basically just going to be 1 point higher than the Ferrari SF24. All right, real quick, I just wanted to hop in here. We'll get back to the vehicles here in a second and we'll see which looks better. But I wanted to talk for just a quick second about the new app that I've been playing around with called the Bricked app. You might have already heard about it. It's a really cool app. I kind of almost think of it as like the Instagram of the LEGO community, but there's a whole bunch of different features with it. You've got everything from obviously connecting with other LEGO fans and kind of seeing what they're building. You've got badges that you can get. You can complete milestones. You can track your LEGO collection, which is probably one of my favorite features of the app itself. But then there's also just looking up sets that you're interested in, clicking through and watching reviews on the sets, and you see some of your favorite YouTubers on there, and you might even see one of my videos every so often. So it's just a really cool app, really cool resource for the LEGO community. Not a sponsored ad. I just want to support other LEGO creators and obviously the designer of this app. I think it's a really cool app, and I think a lot of you in the LEGO community might find it useful, might find it interesting. So if it does interest you, I am going to drop the link down in the description below. It's not an affiliate link. Click on it, download it, have fun, enjoy it, and maybe I'll even see you over there. The Red Bull car looks really good, especially with the massive Red Bull logo up here on the top. They did a really good job with the curves and the design, but the color does throw it off a bit if you're wanting something that looks exactly like the real car. It has the same play functions as the Ferrari, moving steering wheel and wheels by turning the top knob that connects to the internal mechanism. Its movements are very smooth, and the engine Still not great because the previous F1 cars are much better on price per piece, but it's at least an improvement on the Ferrari. I'm also going to stick with the same thing I said about the Ferrari and say that the RB20 is going to just be a little bit of a better purchase when the price gets discounted down to the 160 to 175 range. With that, I do think the Red Bull is a much better value. With 300 more pieces at the exact same price, you would have thought the Ferrari would have been discounted another $10, $20. But 230 for both, an additional 300 pieces on the RB20. So I'm going to put the RB20 at 15 out of 20 on overall value. So on community vote, most people said pass on the Ferrari on the poll that was run on YouTube. But what did everyone say about the RB20? Well, it wasn't any better. The consensus definitely seemed to feel like the RB20 was even more of a pass, with almost 3/4 of the vote saying pass on this one. Again, it was another big surprise for me. I did get some good feedback on the last video with the Ferrari, with most comments saying that the price was the problem with the set, along with the design being better with some of the other alternative brands. I'm assuming that's the same reason for most people passing on the RB20 as well. So the RB20 did do just a little bit worse on the community vote than the Ferrari did, but pretty close. So if I did round to the nearest 10th, we're going to basically end up still at the same 6 out of 20 on the community vote grade. So here is where the final grade ends up on the RB20. The grade is not super high, with all the categories totaling up to a final grade of 66 out of 100. And this is where it's going to fall compared to all the other sets reviewed for the year so far. So which car is better for you to purchase, the RB20 or the SF24? If we're going by the grade, the RB20 is going to be the one to pick up with 66 points, whereas the SF24 came in with 64 points, so a 2-point difference. However, there's only a 2-point difference between both of them. They both had a great build experience. They both look really good. So at the end of the day, if you're planning on buying it, it's really going to come down to what do you like better, Ferrari or Red Bull. Now, if you're looking to pick up the new LEGO STEM set, click on this video here next, and I'm going to tell you all the details on why this set got such a low grade.